All right. Well, I will just kick things off here as people are getting in. Welcome, everyone. I am Rebecca Zabel with Trusted Family. I have been with Trusted Family for about 3 years. And prior to that, I was with a family business association for 5. And so I've enjoyed working with families, learning about families, and hearing their stories. And so when I was talking with Megan about families and branding, I thought it was a great topic to discuss and share with you all. I work now as the marketing manager here at Trusted Family, and so it's a topic that I think just resonates with me as well. So a little bit about Trusted Family, just for anybody who's not super familiar. We do offer a digital platform for family businesses and offices to connect and collaborate on and work with their shareholders, with their family members, with advisors in a nice and secure space. And so I won't get into a full demo today later on, but we will touch a little bit on how you might be able to use the Trusted Family platform specifically for having this discussion and learning about your brand and making sure that your people align on your brand after Megan shares a little bit about her strategy and ideas on that topic. And so we'll touch a little bit on it and you'll get to see the platform towards the end. The Q&A is open. Please feel free to use the Q&A throughout the time. I'll kind of be monitoring that, and if I can fit something in, we will. Otherwise, we will get to a Q&A at the end. So I welcome your questions, and easier to throw them in right away rather than wait till the end and forget what you were going to ask. And so now I am happy to be here with Meghan Lynch, and I will let her introduce herself and share a little bit about her, and then dive into the topic of branding without bragging.
Awesome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's such a great topic. And I know, especially with Trusted Family being all about communication, really kind of connecting communication and some of the both internal within the family, within the network, and then also how do we communicate externally. So thank you guys all for coming. So as Rebecca said, my name is Meghan Lynch. I'm the CEO of 6 Point Strategy, and I really spend my days helping family businesses turn their brand, their reputation into a strategic asset to help them grow their business. And so before we dive in too much, I just want to share a little bit about, let's a little bit about myself. So one of the big reasons why this work matters to me so much is that outside of business, I am a hiker. I am an endurance trail runner. For a while, I was doing ultra marathons. I've run races as long as 50 miles, which sounds impossible to some people, but it's really just about one thing. It's about relentless forward progress, right? Making those moves every day that take you a little bit further. And that's how I see family businesses too, because for me, I am far more impressed when companies can endure through decades or centuries versus those that just kind of come onto the scene, spike quickly, and then fade away, and we never hear about them. And branding, when it's done well, is one of the tools that really helps this endurance happen. And it's one of the reasons why I do a podcast with my 9-year-old son. This is Henry. We do a podcast called Building Unbreakable Brands. And what I really want to talk to him about and engage him in questions about is, how do we create things that endure, right? Like, how do we create generational leadership? How do we have that voice of the next generation come through? And how do we take care of things and be good stewards of the opportunities and assets that we have? And so this for me is kind of like why this work is so important. And just like a marathon takes really different skills than sprinting, building a generational brand is just fundamentally different than building any other kind of brand. And so to kind of kick us off and get us started, I think Rebecca has a little poll for us about when you think about your business and you hear the word endurance, is there one word that comes to mind or something that you think about when you think about endurance as it connects to your family business? So you can go ahead and answer the poll and just take a few minutes to think about that. And I think it's one of the questions that we often hear is this tension between the future and the past, right? Like, how do we grow? How do we evolve without losing what we've built? And so when we're talking about endurance and thinking about endurance when it comes to family businesses, often that tension is kind of at the core.
Yeah. Okay, so and I can't see the question or the answers until I close it. So I'm gonna close it here so that we can get some of your answers. Uh, so let's see if I can see the details here. Okay, so we'll share results possibly, maybe. Nope. Well, I have here the legacy was a big one, generational sustainability, vision, long-term flexibility, sustainable, connections. So kind of all along those long-term lines.
Yeah, really, really great words. I love like this idea of sustainability. Again, so important to be thinking about things that aren't just good for the moment, but are going to be good for the long term. And vision, I think that's a great word and one that sometimes we often lose is not just, again, kind of the past, but also what does that future look like? So we're going to be getting into a lot of that today when we're starting to combine this brand strategy with this concept of generational sustainability and endurance. So we are going to move fast. So if you have pen, paper, want to take some notes, as Rebecca said, the Q&A is open. Please do feel free to drop in questions. We'll definitely reserve some time at the end to do that. And what we're going to be talking about today are a couple of myths when it comes to branding and building a generational brand. We're going to talk about the business value of brand and why it matters to generational businesses. And then we're going to get into some tips and examples so that you can really see what these look like in practice and get some ideas about how you might be able to apply them to your own family business. So to just dive in, one of the myths that I often hear is, especially in very relationship-oriented businesses, sales-oriented businesses, is that brand and marketing are just not relevant to our industry. But then when I kind of push a little bit more and I say, okay, well, if they're not relevant, what is important? They'll say things like, oh, our reputation is our most important asset, or trust is everything in our industry. And I'm curious, Rebecca, if that sounds like familiar to you in conversations that you have with family businesses.
It definitely does. I think that, relationship and trust is core to a lot of family businesses because that's what they've been built on in their past. But I think it's also interesting that they don't equate that to brand and marketing because I think those are kind of the essence of what their brand is and what it can be based around is who they are, their relationships, and how they interact with their audience. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the quotes that we like to use is this one that like your brand is not what you say about yourself. It's not about what's on your website. It's about what your customers say about you. It's what the market says about you. It's what everybody else is saying about your brand. That reputation is your brand. And you can say whatever you want, but if other people have a different story, then that's going to be what your reputation is. So I think it's something that I'll often kind of swap out the word brand with the word reputation with certain clients because they just don't relate to the word. It sounds like logos or taglines or colors to them. But as soon as we're talking about reputation and trust, all of a sudden they're leaning in and like, oh yeah, that's really important. So I think again, for the folks on this call, if it's sometimes easier for you to be thinking about reputation instead of brand, definitely like make that switch in your mind. Because I think whether you feel like you have a brand or not, you definitely have one. And really the only question becomes, is it an intentional brand or is it unintentional, right? Like, are you affecting the conversation that's going on about you, or is it just happening regardless? And one of the stats, I'm sure folks may have seen the Edelman Trust Barometer, but we know that family businesses, actually, this is a place where you start ahead of the game, that they enjoy a 24% trust advantage to public corporations and to government institutions. So this is something that you can really use to your advantage. One of the other myths that I often hear is that our work will speak for itself. And I think that this is often said because, again, it's more about like pride in the craft and more about lack of ego, kind of like a humbleness of like, just head down, do the work, and it will take care of itself if we just do a good job. And so again, like Rebecca, I'm just curious if you know family businesses like that are just like would prefer not to even speak about it, just want to do a good job and hope
Yeah,
that the
I
rest.
mean, I think I think that's a lot of people's natural inclination is that they just want to show through their results of what their value is. And especially I think in the younger family businesses potentially that maybe it's like the second generation or third generation where the founder never really developed a strong marketing plan. It was always through word of mouth and what they were doing. And so they've just kind of continued that style on. And that's just how it's been built out for generations, is that it's what their work is versus how they can talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it kind of almost becomes like the values in the company, instilled in the company, that like we just don't do that. Like we just do the work, and that's the most important thing. And again, I also think that it can be true, it probably has been true in the past. And I think that the biggest difference now is that, if you, for example, go to a grocery store to buy something as simple as salad dressing, you start to see like the overwhelm and the confusion and all the choices that consumers have, whether you're talking about B2B products or whether you're talking about B2C. We just have so much more choice and so many more people in our ear putting things, just creating noise in the environment. So excellence alone doesn't guarantee that you'll be noticed. You could have the most delicious salad dressing, but if nobody ever tries it, then, again, that reputation isn't there. So, um, I love the next two slides as kind of an example of this. So the y-axis here going up is brand strategy or differentiation, like basically how different are you than your competition. The x-axis going across is about operational excellence, right? Like how well do you do the thing that you do? And so again, like, I would imagine that, Rebecca, like you see the same thing that I do, which is that family businesses not only like tend to be doers, but also like would prefer it, like would say that if I had to choose between being flashy and different or being really great at what I do, obviously, like it's better to be great, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true. That again is probably just as they've built on generational foundation that they get the job done and they know what to do and how to do it and that's just what they focus on, I think, intrinsically a lot of
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. But what's really interesting is that the data shows that the market says that it's actually better to be different than good. That growth rates, when you look at it over at least 5 years, are almost double for companies that have a really strong differentiated brand strategy. Again, I do think that a lot of family businesses would look at this and say, yeah, but like it's not going to last. It's not sustainable. And I would agree. Like those are often probably like kind of the flash in the pan companies that like yes, they're differentiated, but there's not any substance behind it. But what I think is cool is that you see the combination of both. And this is where I think that the real opportunity is for family businesses, is that you're already doing the hard work. Like, you're already great doers. You have that operational excellence. I would argue that that's like the harder thing to dial in. But if you just add differentiation to it, all of a sudden you start to unlock a whole new level of
And if
growth.
you can add that differentiation on top of the generational vision, then it can be sustainable.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have that strong foundation, you have that operational excellence, and then you add differentiation. And then not only do you unlock another level of growth, but yeah, to your point, you have something that is not going to be a flash on the pan, but is something that, you get people interested, and then it's backed up by their experience with the company. It's even better than they thought it was going to be. And so this to me like really nicely shows like why brand not only matters, but could actually really be something of a lot of value as we talk about endurance and sustainability. And a big piece of this is because consumers will pay more for a simple, clearer brand. And that starts to create a virtuous cycle because it's easier to be profitable. You can invest back into the operations. You can create that positive, again, sustainable long-term strategy. And and I think that that's something, again, that becomes really powerful when you're talking about how do we grow for the future? How do we make sure that we're enduring?
Mhm.
Um, so we're talking about branding without bragging. And again, in my mind, branding without bragging is generational branding. It is this long-term thinking about how do we build something that is not flashy, but instead is substantive and enduring. And so it has 6 core attributes. So the first is differentiation, which is what we talked about. The second is a really strong story. The third is that customers are at the center of everything. The fourth is it has strong clarity and consistency. The fifth is that it's transferable to other leaders. And the sixth is that it's visionary. And that was even brought up in the beginning in people's words that they're thinking about. So again, these are the 6 attributes that all need to be strong in order to have a brand that endures for the long term. And so we're going to dive into a few of these and see what they actually look like in practice. So secret number 1 of branding without bragging is to talk to your customers. And if there is only one thing that you do after this webinar, I hope this is the thing, because it is the one highest impact piece that I have seen family businesses add to what they're doing is the voice of their customer. And so what do we mean by that? So it doesn't have to be a huge study. We're not talking about surveys. We're talking about 12 focused customer interviews that can transform your business. So not surveys, not online reviews, but real conversations with your ideal customers about their lives and frustrations and goals. And I think a lot of people hear 12 and they're like, that's not enough. Like, we have so many customers. How could 12 be enough? So one of the pieces of that is like what on the research side we'd call segmentation, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're really talking about a targeted segment, and then we're talking about ideal customers only. We're talking about the customers that you would like to clone. If you could clone them, you could take over the world. We want to be really talking to them. And what you're doing is starting to look for patterns in the conversations, and you will actually start to see them. We start to see them after even like 4 or 5 conversations. By the time you hit 12, the insights just keep getting sharper and more powerful. after about 12, if you've done a good job in segmentation, the insights just start to level off. Like you get little little extra ideas, but the big aha moments have kind of already happened. Um, so just 12 conversations can really give you incredible clarity, making this a lot easier than what people I think of it in their mind. So why? Like, what do these conversations unlock? And so I want to tell about a story of one of our clients, Dan. He's the second generation owner of a very highly commoditized business. It was a business that his dad started, and they print labels. So, not a whole lot of differentiation there. They were in a very commoditized industry. They had one unique standout product. It was a visitor badge label that would expire after a day and kind of read void. So it was cool. It was patented and was some IP that they had. And but they were still struggling to really get it to market. They had 4 different brand names that led to team frustration, a lot of customer confusion, and a sales team that was like really working way too hard for every deal that they brought in. The cost of customer acquisition was just through the roof. And so Dan didn't have a next generation interested in the business. And so his big worry was that he was going to end up selling off equipment instead of transferring a valuable business. And so that was when we met him. And so the first thing that we did was this voice of the customer research. And so again, we really focused in, we talked to 12 of the ideal customers in the security industry that were the target for this patented technology. And that was the game changer. The customer that they thought that they were targeting, that was kind of their historical customer, was administrators and secretaries in schools. They were selling to like primary and secondary schools. And when we were talking to their target customers, we were talking to security professionals, ex-military, ex-police, who were running complex security operations in hospitals and corporations. And to them, the product that Dan's team had was a game changer for them because they really valued visibly marking every visitor that came in a way that, a school secretary was not seeing. And so the product solved a really important problem for them. And that helped to clarify, like, okay, who are we talking to and what do we need to be saying and where are they finding information? So the company, when we met them, was Data Management, and we repositioned them as Threshold Visitor Management Systems. And we had them speaking directly to these security professionals, using their language, their pain points, and really focusing on that group. And suddenly their sales team had all this energy. They had a clear message, and they even had targeted events that they could go to where they knew these professionals were getting education, networking, finding out about new products and solutions. And so they just surrounded them and built these really meaningful relationships in this market. And all of a sudden, deals started happening easier, word of mouth started happening easier, and it was just a game changer. The other piece was that it helped Threshold capture the attention of the largest global player in the label market, which is Avery Labels. And that Avery ended up strategically acquiring Threshold in order to get themselves into the security business. So what once was this commoditized company all of a sudden was now being seen as a strategic acquisition by a major global brand. And so this team just went from commoditized and stuck and frustrated to repositioned for growth and strategic acquisition. And for Dan, the best part is that the brand ended up staying intact. They use it as Threshold and Avery Company, and also the team stayed intact. So all like his father's legacy that he was so worried was going to be dismantled, all of a sudden now has this new life and new energy, and he can retire and feel good about it. So it's just amazing what these conversations can unlock. My kind of mantra with clients is that you don't have to have the answers, your customers have the answers. And that is just like the really critical piece that as soon as you understand that, it both lets you just kind of relax and just talk to them and learn about them and unlocks all this opportunity.
So when you were talking to his customers in that research, how did you make the switch from talking to the administrators to the security professionals in those conversations to understand that they were the true customer that they needed to be talking to?
Yeah, a big piece of it was again, when we talked about segmentation, we were talking to their kind of old market, the school administrators, but then they also had already identified security as an opportunity that they just couldn't quite crack. And so they said, could you also talk to some folks in security? And the more we talked to them, the more we realized that like the amount of pain that they had around visitor management, the amount of pressure that they felt personally to make sure that every visitor was marked as they came through, that it was just a much different level of value and yeah, just value that they put on the product and the solution versus seeing it as like basically a school supply to purchase on the other side. So it really helped us like zone in on like, oh no, you have something really powerful here. And then the other big thing was once we kind of had language and really understood their world, we could craft that messaging that resonated with it, that they were kind of speaking to the schools, not speaking to security
Right.
professionals, if that makes
Perfect.
sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. All right. So secret number 2 is really about reframing marketing itself. And so similar to how like I was talking about reframe brand as reputation, if it's helpful, for generational brands, reframing marketing becomes a really important thing. If you can reframe marketing as storytelling and education, it can actually become an act of service for your team. And we saw this a bit in Threshold's team once they realized that their customers valued education, they valued professional development, they started being thought leaders. But storytelling and education are pretty much universal values. So it becomes something that you can almost always come back to as a way to build a generational brand. So one great example of this is Corey. He's been our client for over 15 years. And Corey is a non-family executive at Hyde Tools. They're a 4th generation. They were a 140-year-old business when we met them. And they were once an innovator, but had really stalled out. And they were in this place where price wars were eroding their margins, growth had really flatlined, and the community where they are a major employer was starting to worry about job losses and layoffs. The answer for the Hyde team was to start reframing sales and marketing as education to professional customers and also like their next generation of customers. How do we build the loyal customers that we want that are going to sustain the future of this company? And so Corey and his team started partnering with trade organizations. And so they were both training new professionals, and they were also able to get ideas by working with those professionals on new problem-solving products that they could launch that would, again, be really meaningful to these folks. And we were also able to identify a whole bunch of how to type content that they could put on YouTube, that they could take professionals that they had relationships with, and who also had their own social media followings, and start to have them demonstrate important things for consumers who we call like the serious DIYers. They kind of like aspire to be professionals. And so they want to know how to do things the right way. And they also want to get ideas of like, I want to use the tools that the professionals use. And so by teaching and solving problems for customers instead of selling, Hyde was really able to completely re-energize this 150-year-old brand. They went from this sort of decline and fear and were able to position themselves for growth and leadership. So Hyde had some amazing results. They doubled their brand share within just 3 years. They had over 300 million views of their educational content. But again, one of the most exciting things was that the fifth generation all of a sudden got really interested in the business because they started this kind of like digital platform, digital footprint. And so they were really energized by some of the new opportunities that they saw for themselves personally and professionally. And so, again, the company is now well positioned to be sustainable into the future. And I think the other thing when we're talking about education is that sometimes it can also like feel a little bit dry, right? Like, is that really like we're not a boring brand, or we don't want to be, do white papers and things like that. Well, we when you're branding without bragging, it's also okay to have a little fun with it. We have a client who has really like gone far with this, and they've become really well known for their annual education event, not because of, I mean, it has good content, but people really come back because of the fun atmosphere. So they do really fun themes, like this was their Back to the Future theme last year. We even found a DeLorean for them and brought it in. So I think also to think about like, education storytelling can also and should be infused with your personality. If you're a fun company and you like to have a good time, then bring that into the education, make it more entertaining and engaging, and don't feel like you have to be just the facts.
Yep.
All right, so secret number 3 is to be thinking about brand evolution, that vision, as a way to engage the next generation. And this one is particularly exciting to me. Again, saw a bit of that with Hyde, where like as soon as they started to position themselves for growth, the next generation started being like, oh, actually, like this old manufacturing company might actually be kind of cool, and there might be some opportunity here. But Cornell did a research of next gens, and the number one concern is family communication. So trusted families on that, helping with that piece. But after they've gotten their trusted family app, the number 2 concern is the like, where's the opportunity, right? Is our business growing? Is there a future for me in this company? And that to me was like eye-opening of, okay, like next gens aren't not coming into the business because they don't care about it. They're not coming into it because they don't see the future. They're not seeing the opportunity that previous generations saw. And also, it's worrisome to me that you could have next gens in a very solid family business, again, that like head down, let the work speak for ourselves, looking at that and saying, where's the opportunity? And I think a lot of that, again, is it's not what you say about it, it's what other people say about you. So if that reputation is the company's not growing, or people don't see the vision, it becomes really hard to get that next gen interested.
Yeah. We're always more excited for things that are growing and have potential for the future versus staying stagnant. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And people just get, drawn in, and family members are no exception to that rule of being attracted to, people want to be with a winner, right? And so if it feels like there's more opportunity, more growth outside of the family business, then they're going to make that decision for their future and their family. Um, and so we a visionary brand can be a great tool to get this next generation involved. So I always think about it as like buying a suit for, this is Henry again, getting ready for his piano recital. You can see his suit is a little bit too big for him because this is the fall recital, and I know in the spring I don't want to be buying a new suit and he's growing so fast. I'm going to give him one that's like just a little bit too big because I know that in the fall he's going to look great. So it may not fit today, but it gives him room to grow. And soon it's like, yes, this was the right thing all along. And so having this brand that's maybe a little bit aspirational, but still is anchored to reality, is a great way to engage the next generation and helping them see opportunity for themselves in the brand. So a great example of this is Jessica of Sweetgrass Dairy. And so Jessica's mom, Desiree, founded Sweetgrass Dairy using milk from their fourth generation family dairy farm. But Jessica was in college and business school and had no interest in coming back home to South Georgia to be a farmer. And so she was starting to think about, again, seeing opportunity elsewhere. And the demand, at the same time as that was happening, the demand for Sweetgrass Dairy cheese was growing, and her parents were starting to get worried that there was no successor, and they really did not want to sell to private equity. So it's just kind of a question of like, oh, like it feels like we have something here, but do we just shut it down because there doesn't seem to be a path forward for it? And Jessica was starting to feel really guilty about kind of being the one that lets her parents down and lets that legacy go. We ended up working with the family to position Sweetgrass Dairy as this visionary brand, these cheesemakers of the American South, to start showcasing Georgia cheese, and Georgia is not known for cheese yet. So starting to really bring that onto the culinary scene. And that caught the interest of Jessica, who was in business school in marketing, and her husband, Jeremy, who was a chef and looking at culinary. And this idea of building a brand that they were starting to celebrate their hometown, their home region, and bring that to the world started to feel like a vision and a mission that they could get enthusiastic about, and actually that their skills were even better than Jessica's parents' skills, who were much more on the farming side to execute. So all of a sudden it went from not so interested to now all of a sudden they are investing in a huge new operational facility so that they can have better consistency in product, prepare themselves for national distribution, start winning all these awards for the cheese, and again, really like breathe this new life into a brand that seemed like it didn't have a future. So they really went from being this kind of like unappealing alternative to the next generation, either like settling and coming back home to do something that they didn't really want to do, or just letting it go, to all of a sudden becoming this like really exciting professional endeavor that combines Jessica's passion for business with her husband Jeremy's culinary skill. And so the next generation not only entered it, but they invested in the business and continued to grow it. And the cool thing is that they saw this growth happen, and now Jessica and Jeremy's kids are now starting to think about their own future in the business, and starting to think about that third generation coming in. So just seeing this opportunity for the family to work together to kind of vision for the brand in the future really became an exciting way for them to keep the family business going. And so this is where I thought it would be fun to kind of see that like trusted family platform in action. And I I can stop sharing here. So
Yes. Yep.
Rebecca, you can
Perfect. And so we
take us.
will get our screen share here. All right. And so here we have our trusted family platform, and this is our homepage. And so this is what a user will see when they log in, and it's unique to that user. So depending upon what roles and responsibilities they have. And so I can see all of these different spaces to do the different specific roles that I am a part of. So if I'm part of the family, or if I need to do family council things, I'll go to the family council space. But today we're going to be talking about our family brand. And so as you build out a platform and have a trusted family platform to, centralize your communications and discussions with people and resources with your family, you can create a space for different projects or specific things that you want to make sure are easy for people to find. And so I've created a space for our family brand here. And so you can see I go into this space and I have some shortcuts up the top that are the important things that I want people to be able to enter this space, easily find, and be able to utilize those resources. And so you can throw on a document and a shortcut to your brand guidelines as a document, individual document. These other shortcuts all go to folders that are in the space. And so if you have some video testimonials from your founders, from important family members that you want to share, you can store them all in the files, and they can also be found in the files here. And so you can set up your file system however you want for people to be able to search and find those things. If you wanted to set up a family education program about your brand, you could put different resources, different tools, information about your family and your brand in different lessons, and have people work through those lessons. And then you can also coordinate events in each of these spaces. And so you can see the past events that you've had and held and have practiced, let's plan our strategic stewardship. How are we going to utilize our brand in stewarding our company and our resources? And you can also plan upcoming events. And so one thing I wanted to show you too, just as a unique tool for our platform, is when you're planning an event, I can set this up, and if I don't know exactly what the date and time is, I can list a few options out here. And as people are responding, if they can come to this event, they can choose which times that they're available. And so I can see here that 2 people have voted for this slot. And so I will update this, and I'm going to pick that time as the time for the event, and I'll just update that there. And so then that time is set, and people can respond to that event for that specific date. And so those are just a few general ways that you can use this platform for something specific like this. With these different shortcuts, you can have a place specifically for your values, specifically for the brand assets that you want people to be able to use. You can have conversations around the different things and how it applies, how they should be able to use these things. And so I think it's a great way and a great space to really customize for your family and whatever your family is needing to accomplish. But quick little demo show of what you can accomplish in just a single space. There's much more, and we're happy to have a full demo with anybody that would be interested in that.
Yeah, it's awesome because I think like again the you can really help to spur those stories between family members about what is it that we do stand for, share what's already known, but then also have events, engage them in conversations about where we're going, connect their stories to that future. Again, like, thinking about like Jessica and Jeremy being able to like see themselves in it. And the other thing we find too is that like it's they're never too young to have these conversations. I'm doing my podcast with Henry, who's 9, and he comes, he says some things that I'm like, wow, that's like profound. We could be learning from that. And so I think having these spaces that are accessible and available to the family to either help members have conversations with their kids, educate them, and really
And having a centralized space like Trusted Family, I think, brings the whole conversation into one area, and you can really see if things are in alignment, or if there's things that you need to correct, or if somebody's talking about your brand in a way that's like, well, we kind of want to focus more on a different aspect, or maybe it's if somebody makes a comment in that space, you can be like, oh, that's an interesting take on that. Maybe that's something we want to capitalize on and really focus on growth potential for. So I think
yeah, and I
it's
think especially with like social media and all these digital platforms, family members have their own, are thinking about their own brands and reputations and relationships. And so having them understand that connection and having a place where you can have conversations, really, I think it creates that sense of stewardship that like, oh, right, this is something that's bigger than me and can be just a really valuable way to engage. And as you said, keep that alignment, because it's easy to also like splinter off and have a bunch of side conversations or different understandings about who we are, what we do. It doesn't
As
take.
we're wrapping up here, I want to remind you, if you have any questions, please throw them into the Q&A. If there's something that you're thinking about your brand or questioning how you might be able to utilize some of these ideas or strategies on building and growing your brand, throw that in and we'll have Megan touch on that and respond.
Yeah, definitely. um yeah, I'd be happy to answer questions about like your specific business, your specific case, or if you have any questions about any of the case studies. I know I kind of like went through them quickly, but if you want to know more about any of the backstories or the detail of how they did things, happy to share in more detail. Um, but also, as we're wrapping up, just to kind of like recap, how are we branding without bragging? So, number one, we are centering our customers. We are having those 12 conversations with our ideal customers, ensuring that we are regularly talking to them and surfacing insights. We are not talking about branding and marketing as selling. We are talking about it as education, storytelling, service, really bringing our values into how we interact with customers, how we tell our story, our strategy, our plans. All of those things can be reframed and founded in values that feel good to people and that feel good to our customers. And then we're going to use that visionary brand, that aspirational brand, that suit that's just a little bit too big, as a way to help the next generation see themselves. And this is both like the family next generation, but we also see it for attracting that next level talent, that, non-family CEO that you're trying to get in, or that next level marketing talent that wants to be a part of a growing brand. These are all ways that you can help to both attract and retain great people in the business, because that we all know that like that is going to be the real future of the company.
I mean, I think that's a great point, that it's not just the next generation that you need to worry about attracting. You also, like, that growing brand also attracts the rest of your team and employees too, that you want to pull into your company.
Yeah. And even your next generation customers, like the customers that you want for the future, who are maybe communicating in ways that are different how they did, 20, 30 years ago. So having a brand that everybody sees as growing and in the future is critical. So yeah, if you've got questions, I'm definitely here to answer them. If anybody has a question that they're uncomfortable putting in the chat or asking publicly, this QR code takes you to like a private form, and I can record an answer to you offline before the weekend. So also an option.
I don't have any questions yet, but I do have a comment that Jennifer loved hearing all the case studies, and it's inspiring to see the power of leaning into your brand. So throw that out there as a nice comment. And another thank you for the insightful presentation. So
Awesome. Well, glad it resonates. And again, I think if you're curious about like how your brand is stacking up and want a quick little health tip, I know Rebecca's going to be sending out a link to the assessment and a download that you can have. There's also a QR code here if you can't wait and are antsy to do it, but it's a quick brand assessment, takes a couple minutes, and is just kind of a self-assessment to help you understand how you might stack up in the different aspects of generational branding, and then can also give you some like tips and resources to continue to strengthen your brand, whether it's already strong and you're looking to just help it continue, or whether you've got some points that you can kind of shore up. So.
yeah, perfect. And yes, I will get the recording out later today, as well as a link to that assessment that she has there. We do have one question that came in. Do you have specific tips for how to market a company that provides a specific service to family members and not necessarily a concrete product?
Yeah, I mean, if like in a way, it's not that different, right? Like a service is still, there's still a lot of education that needs to happen around a service. So I do think that kind of leaning into education and storytelling is a big piece of it. The I think it can also be helpful to have that voice of the customer present when you're talking about it as a family. So oftentimes when we do voice of the customer research, we are recording it, and we'll actually like play clips for the family so that they can hear the voice of the customers who are impacted by the service. Because I think it helps when you don't have something that is concrete, like you can't bring somebody to a factory tour or something like that. It can feel harder to talk about. And I think the most concrete way to do it is through impact and through customer stories. And so starting to bring some of that into family conversations and helping family members feel more connected to customers and the impact and value of the service goes a long way. And also those stories are going to be what they repeat to other people, right? Like that's going to be the way that they talk about the pride that they have in what the business does, is to give them stories that they can repeat and that feel impactful, even if it's a quote or, something like that they can lean
You
on.
don't have a product to show. You're going to show the clients or the customers that are satisfied and extremely happy with your service that can really tell your story for you.
Yeah, yeah, and to tell their stories and to really celebrate them. I think that that's a big piece of kind of centering that customer, is to kind of make them the hero of the story, and then your service becomes that like enablement for it to happen. And I think that that helps people feel connected to something that's bigger than
Yeah.
themselves.
Well, I think that is all we have. So, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you. Let's see. Can we do a follow-up on the Our Family brand space? A follow-up question, or certainly I can show that again, or oh, a follow-up session.
Oh, follow-up session.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
that
we
would
can
be that
certainly.
would,
I'll talk with client success about that, and we can see what we can get going there. So, thank you all for joining us, and we will get this out later today, and you can share with the rest of your families and start having your own branding discussions. Thank you so much, Megan, for your insights.
Thanks so much for having me, Rebecca.